I typically make videos from a Scrum Master from an Agile coach perspective when talking about sprint retrospectives, how to run effective sprint retros, the common sprint retros mistake. But today, I want to try something a little bit different. This video will be from the point of view of a participant in a sprint retrospective. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to get the most out of your next sprint retrospective, how to get your ideas, your point of view heard in a sprint retrospective, how to improve yourself and the team, how to do all these things as a participant in a retrospective. First off, it's always good to start with a why. Why do we do sprint retros? What's the purpose of a sprint retrospective? As per the Scrum Guide 2020, the purpose of a sprint retro is to inspect how the last sprint went with regards to people, relationships, process, and tools, identify and order the major items that went well and potential improvements, create a plan for implementing improvements to the way the Scrum team does its work. Basically, in short, the sprint retro is here to create a safe place where the team members, people in the team, can honestly share feedback with each other with regards to what went well, what could be improved in future sprints. It's a practice that helps teams reflect on their way of working and continuously improve in their journey, in their agile journey, in the journey of a project. Let's get back to you for a second. What's your role in the sprint retro? What's the role of a participant in the sprint retrospective? A participant in a sprint retro has three things to do. First, add reflections, their ideas, their insights on a virtual board, on a physical board using sticker notes. Well, it's based on the format that the facilitator decided to propose for a sprint retro. Second, the participant will usually help the facilitator group the sticky notes together into themes that we can talk about later. But prior to that, the voting needs to be done. The participant will vote on things that they believe are really important that should be discussed right now in the retro. And the third thing is discussing these themes, these sticky notes, these ideas, what went well, what could be improved, and finding action items that can be put in the product backlog or even the sprint backlog of the next sprint so that we can start improving together. The most important thing that a participant needs to do in a sprint retro is to share their unique perspective on something. Let me give you an example. Maybe there was a production issue during the sprint. Something broke on production, and you were here during the production issue. You helped fixing it. So in the sprint retro, you can talk about this issue and decide as a team together, how can we prevent that in the future, or how can we improve things? You can share your perspective. You were here during the whole process for production issue. You have your unique perspective on that. But what about David? David wasn't here this day. He was on leave. Wasn't here during the production issue. Typically, people in this scenario, David wouldn't be sharing ideas in the sprint retro, which is totally wrong. Even though David wasn't here this day, David still has some insights, a unique perspective from an outsider of a team, a developer who is involved in the process of development, of releasing things to production, of fixing bugs, but a developer who wasn't here during the production issue, a developer who has an external point of view on the issue, and David should be contributing to this conversation, sharing his unique point of view. But sometimes David really doesn't have an opinion to share or wants to join this conversation. Let other people talk concerning this issue, and that's totally fine. Now, David, in this scenario, as a excess capacity for the sprint retro, David is free, doesn't want to join the conversation. So David is free to help the facilitator take notes for the facilitator because it's hard taking notes, especially for complex subjects or complex issues. Maybe group things together to help the facilitator take the actions down, drop the actions down to help the facilitator. Let's talk about some more tips, things that you need to start using right now to guarantee that your next sprint retro is effective and fun for you and everyone else involved. First thing, come prepared. Extremely important that you come prepared. Typically, in a sprint retro, participants, when it's time to share their ideas, what went well, what could be improved, it's now that they start thinking about things. They start reflecting on what happened during the past sprint. 2 weeks, maybe, if you're using a 2 weeks format. That's a lot of time. I can't even remember what I ate for lunch 3 days ago. Can't remember. That's why you need to come prepared. It's hard to think of something, especially something meaningful, with a 5-minute timer looking at you. Come prepared. Look at all your tasks that you created or that you closed on Jira during the sprint. Look at all the things that you shared in MS Teams or the Zoom or anything that you use to share stuff with a team or maybe email. Look at all your interactions. Who did you talk to in the sprint? Any meetings? Any brainstorming sessions? Any trainings? Use all these things to start reflecting on how to improve or conversations that you want to have in the retro. Also go through the previous retro actions. I hope that the facilitator of the previous retro is storing all the action items somewhere that can easily be accessed prior to the retro. So look at all these actions and ensure that all the things assigned to you are done. One of the things that I usually suggest participants doing is building a habit of reflection throughout the sprint, not at the end of a sprint. If you really want to improve as a team, as an individual, you really want to build a product that's valuable to the customer, build this habit of always be reflecting, always be challenging things, processes, interactions with people, so that when you have a sprint retro, you're already ready because you are thinking about all these things for the past 2 weeks. Number 2, focus on the team instead of task while building your reflections with all the data that we've collected. Focus on the team, on processes, instead of specific things, specific tasks, which happened during the sprint. You see, user stories, tasks, they change. Not every single sprint you're going to do the same thing. They change, new features and all that. Always developing new stuff in the application or the service or anything that you're building. But processes, team dynamics, interactions, they remain there until you do something about them. As an example, instead of writing, we weren't able to meet the sprint goal, to reach the sprint goal because of a payment user story that wasn't completed. That's good, but it's vague. Instead of that, write, the payment user story wasn't completed because I feel that the desk check process was an impediment. It was slowing us down. It needs improvement. We do a lot of back and forth for the desk check process. Maybe we need to review the desk check process. Way better, right? And you can even talk about solutions. If you already thought of something to improve the desk check process, write it down on the sticky note. You can then talk about that with the team and agree on a way forward together. And the same thing applies for things that went well. Instead of saying the sprint demo or the sprint review went well, talk about why do you feel or think the sprint review went well. Specifics. Which brings me to point number 3. Add details, add your personal touch, sell your idea on the sticky note. Have you ever wrote something that you felt was extremely important, but you didn't get any votes? You didn't get any votes because you didn't sell your ideas to the audience, to the participants of a sprint retro. So instead of writing as an example, the pull requests, we need to review the process of a pull request. Too vague, no one's going to vote on that. Instead, give details, specifics, like requiring multiple pull requests results in a lot of back and forth between developers, hurting our velocity, and as a result, we couldn't meet the sprint goal for the previous sprint or the current sprint. Can we reduce the number of pull requests PR required? Huge difference compared to the first version. Tip number 4, focus on actions. Sometimes a discussion during the sprint retro can take ages to complete. 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, very passionate about the subject. It's good, people are sharing, but can this be optimized? Yeah, it can be optimized. I guarantee you that if everyone, all the participants in the sprint retro had this action mentality, always be thinking about what's the next action that we can take to improve? What's the smallest action that we can take to improve right now? If everyone had this mentality, the retros would be way more optimized. And it doesn't need to be a big action. No, big actions, big steps, very scary. Don't go there. Always have this mentality. What's the smallest thing, the next step, the smallest step that I can take, which will at least improve a process or the thing that you're talking about. That's it. If you need to talk about deep dive into the issue afterwards, maybe the smallest step could be just organize a brainstorming session to talk about this issue so that we can talk about other things in the sprint retro and keep going. Which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips, insights on Agile, Scrum, personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.